I wanted to go to school, but none of the colleges in Utah were accepting undergraduates. They were saving their deferments for.
Okay.
I decided that if I was going to go into the military, I was going to do something that I wanted to do, rather than let them choose.
Sure.
And one of their selling points is there is no ASA in Vietnam, which was true.
Yeah.
There was no ASA. The Army Security Agency was a branch of the National Security Agency. The Army basically, you do whatever the Army tells you to do.
That's kind of how the military works, right? You do what you're told.
President Johnson decided he needed 50,000 more troops in Vietnam.
Oh. Yeah.
That was all hush-hush, and we weren't there. I always told my children that the Vietnam experience was 90% boredom and 10% sheer terror.
Okay.
So we destroyed the helicopter, and then we spent weeks looking for them, and we never found any evidence as to where they went, and no ground intelligence to find out if they had been captured or killed or whatever. We found out that the children in I was in a town called Pleiku, which was up in the Central Highlands. It was in the mountainous country, and it's where the Montyards mostly lived in Vietnam. There was indigenous people, and there were a lot of orphans in these Catholic orphanages. And we found out that at night that the Viet Cong would collect their taxes.
Oh.
And they would actually steal food from the children and leave them destitute. And we would take that money and buy food in the town.
Yeah.
And give it to the orphanages. She was a boat person. Her and her grandmother, when Saigon fell in 1975, I had already been home for, almost 3 years. And the story she tells is her and her grandmother found her in the orphanage, and they walked barefooted from Pleiku to Nha Trang, which was about 200 miles. And she has a group on Facebook that honors all of the veterans.
Oh, sure.
To this day, she's very adamant about remembering the veterans that helped.
Sure.
But when I went to Vietnam, I got the Lehigh Free Press. But she made sure that all of the actually anybody in the military that was from Lehigh, she would send them copies of the Lehigh Free Press to let them know what was going on back home. Well, see, when I grew up, all of it was all World War I veterans.
Okay.
They basically run Lehigh.
Yeah.
So I transferred over into heating and air conditioning.
Okay.
It was HVAC.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I went to school for 2 years. I got my associate degree. I got into what they call the Vietnam Veteran Readjustment Program.
Okay.
And you was able to build your own home on sweat equity.
Wow.
It was called National Cylinder Gas back then. And then it was sold out several times and ended up, when Geneva was shut down, I thought, well, yeah, that'd be fun. Get together with a bunch of veterans and ride. And basically that got me back into the American Legion. And I attended the meetings. So the next week I was the post commander.
You got the job.
And I've had it ever since. I'm still doing it, so I've seen a lot of veterans come and go. We just buried one of our old stalwarts, and that was Wilkin. We called him Wilkie. The premier program of the American Legion, statewide and nationwide, is Boys State.
Okay.
And that's for juniors in high school that go to Weber State, and they learn how the government works. And they have to memorize a speech on on the Constitution and what it means to them, and then they're given a subject to make it about. So they got to be prepared to talk about any one of the 27 amendments of the Constitution, which most high school students today graduate and don't even know how many amendments there are to the Constitution. One of the girls that won our post, she's now a law clerk for one of the Supreme Court justices. Pretty proud of her.
As you should be.
22 veterans take their lives every day.
Wow.
Nationwide. That's got to stop.
Yeah, it's too many.
You know, the worst part about being a veteran is being forgotten. You got to find an interest.
Yeah.
To be able to do it. So, and I enjoy. We have a breakfast once a month where we just go have breakfast, and they're just veterans, and you just sit around the table. In Lehigh, it used to be that your class was like a family. Everybody knew everybody. You knew everything about everybody. That's where I met Gene Fulmer, the heavyweight champion of the world. Growing up, we had 6 policemen, knew every one of them, and they all knew us too.
Hopefully not too intimately, because you were in trouble or something.
Oh yeah, there was one old policeman. His name was Ray Edwards. He would catch you doing something that you shouldn't be doing. He'd kick your butt.
Sure.
And then he'd take you home, and your dad would kick your butt. The Vietnam veterans, when they came home, they were actually hated. I always wondered, after fighting that war in Vietnam and all I went through there, that I would have to sit there and point guns at my own citizens. But basically get turned away by the local schools here because you were a Vietnam veteran, and there were postgraduates that needed to get their master's and doctorate degrees. Hate has no place in anybody's life.